The sun was rising slowly over the tall school gates. It was the first day of the new term. Students laughed and walked in groups, wearing neat, polished shoes and heavy backpacks. But one boy walked alone. His name was Rizwan. He wore an old, faded uniform. His shoes had tiny cracks near the toes. His bag looked like it had been used for years. Still, he walked with quiet confidence, looking straight ahead, ignoring the whispers. Behind him, two boys laughed. "Look at his shoes. Does he think he belongs here?" Rizwan heard them, but he didn't stop. This school was for rich children. Their parents were doctors, business owners, and officers. Rizwan's father worked at a roadside tea stall. His mother washed clothes for others. And now, Rizwan was here because he had passed the scholarship exam with the highest marks. But no one cared about that. They only saw his poor clothes and his silent face. The cold morning, at the school gate, a tall man stood watching the students. He wore a green uniform, not a teacher's, not a guard's. He was the janitor. His name was Uncle Kareem. He had a white beard, rough hands, and eyes that looked like they had seen many things. When Rizwan walked past, Uncle Kareem gave a small nod. Rizwan gave one back. They didn't speak. But something passed between them. In the classroom, when Rizwan entered the classroom, the noise stopped. Everyone looked. He quietly sat in the last row. A boy in the front whispered loudly, "Is he lost? Or did someone bring their servant to class?" Laughter filled the room. The teacher walked in. She looked at Rizwan but said nothing. She handed out the timetable and started the class. All day, Rizwan stayed quiet. He took notes. He listened carefully. But he felt the stares, the giggles, the cold looks. At lunch, he sat alone. He unwrapped a simple lunch from newspaper, 2 rotis and potato curry. A group of boys walked by, holding juice boxes and sandwiches. "Is this a school or a free charity home now?" one said loudly. They laughed again. Rizwan didn't look up, but inside, something hurt. The principal's call. At the end of the day, Rizwan was called to the principal's office. He walked in slowly. The principal was sitting with a serious face. Beside him stood a boy in a fancy school sweater, Adil, one of the rich boys. "He doesn't belong here, sir," Adil said. "He smells bad. He eats on the floor. He even talks to the janitor." The principal looked at Rizwan. "Is that true?" Rizwan stood silently. "I work hard. I want to study." The principal sighed. "You have the scholarship. That's all that matters. But be careful. This is not your world. Behave properly." Rizwan left without a word. Outside, Uncle Kareem was cleaning the hallway. He looked at Rizwan for a second. "Do you feel small?" he asked softly. Rizwan nodded. "Let them laugh," Kareem said. "The world has laughed at greater men. Just walk straight." Then he went back to cleaning. Rizwan stared at him. There was something strange about Kareem. He never spoke much, never smiled, but he always watched, carefully, quietly. The hidden locker. That evening, Rizwan forgot his notebook in class. When he returned to get it, the school was almost empty. As he passed the janitor's room, he noticed the door was open. Inside, it was small and dark. A table, a fan, a small bed. But then he saw something. A small wooden box with a lock. It was slightly open. Inside, he saw a photograph. It showed a younger Uncle Kareem in a soldier's uniform. Behind him stood a helicopter. In his hand, he held a medal. Just then, a sound. Rizwan turned. Uncle Kareem stood at the door. They looked at each other for a long moment. "Don't touch things that are not yours," Kareem said softly. "I'm sorry," Rizwan whispered. Kareem walked in, picked up the photo and locked the box. Before closing the door, he said just one thing. "Sometimes, people forget what someone once was, but the past never forgets." Then the door shut. Rizwan stood in the hallway confused. Who was Kareem? Why did he hide that photo? And why was a man with a soldier's medal cleaning floors? He didn't know it yet, but that secret would change everything. It was the day of the school's science exhibition. Every class had to display their best student projects. Judges were coming from outside. The principal wanted the school to shine. Rizwan had worked day and night on his model. He used cardboard, wires, and even an old toy motor from a broken fan. His project was a small hydropower dam, showing how flowing water could produce electricity. It wasn't fancy like the others, but it worked. And it had one thing others didn't: his hard work. Setting the stage. The school auditorium was decorated with banners and posters. The rich students had expensive-looking projects: solar robots, AI demonstrations, and smart homes built with perfect tools. Rizwan stood at the end of the row with his simple dam model. Some of the students passed by and laughed. One girl said, "That looks like something from a trash can." Another boy whispered, "Where did he get this?" "From a garbage shop." Rizwan heard them. He stayed quiet. He had heard worse. The judges' arrival. Soon, the 3 judges entered. One was a science professor. The second was a well-known engineer. The third was a man in army uniform. The same moment, Uncle Kareem walked in through the back door with a mop and bucket. He was cleaning quietly, head down, listening. The judges went from table to table. Students showed off their projects, smiling, explaining confidently. Some used tablets, others had banners. Finally, they reached Rizwan. He stood straight, hands folded nervously. "This is a working hydropower dam," he said. "When water flows through the bottle, it spins the wheel, which runs the small light." He poured water into a plastic pipe. The wheel spun. A small bulb glowed. The judges leaned in. The army officer raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. What did you use to build this?" "Cardboard, old wires, and parts from a broken fan," Rizwan said. The engineer smiled. "Very creative." The girl from earlier rolled her eyes and muttered, "Very poor, you mean?" Everyone laughed. The moment of shame. Just then, Adil, the rich boy, walked past with his group. He pushed the edge of Rizwan's table hard. The water bottle tipped over. The dam model collapsed. The wheel broke off. The wires snapped. The bulb died. Everyone stared. Silence filled the hall. Rizwan looked at his broken project, speechless. "Oops," Adil said with a fake smile. "Didn't see it there." The principal, standing nearby, said nothing. The judges looked confused. The army officer frowned. Rizwan bent down slowly, trying to fix the wires with shaking hands. His throat felt dry, his chest heavy. He wanted to cry, but he didn't. A silent witness. In the corner of the room, Uncle Kareem stood still. He dropped his mop, walked across the room. Students watched as the janitor moved toward Rizwan. He bent down beside him. Without a word, he picked up the broken motor, checked the wires, and began helping. Everyone stared. "What is the janitor doing?" Someone whispered. "He's not supposed to touch the project." But no one dared stop him. Together, Rizwan and Kareem repaired the wheel. Kareem took out a small wire cutter from his pocket. Old, rusted but sharp. In 2 minutes, the model was working again. The bulb glowed. The judges clapped softly. But the principal looked uncomfortable. A strange reaction. The army officer stepped forward. He looked at Uncle Kareem carefully. "You used the wire cutter like a trained hand," he said. Kareem stayed silent. The officer looked closer. His eyes narrowed. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small military pin. "I've only seen someone hold a wire like that in field operations," he said. "What's your name?" "Just Kareem," the janitor replied. The officer stepped back. His eyes widened. He turned to the principal. "Do you know who he is?" The principal shrugged. "He's just the janitor." "No," the officer said firmly. "This man saved an entire squad in the '98 war. He's the man they called Ghost Hand." Gasps filled the room. Rizwan stared at Kareem. "Ghost Hand?" he whispered. The officer nodded. "Explosives expert. Disappeared after the war. No one knew where he went." Kareem looked away. "I didn't want to be known. I just wanted peace." Truth revealed. The engineer spoke up. "So this boy was learning from a war hero." Kareem replied quietly, "I've only showed him where to look. He built it himself." The judge turned to the principal. Why was he being treated like garbage? The principal had no answer. One of the students began clapping. Slowly, others joined. Soon, the whole hall echoed with applause. Rizwan stood beside Kareem. For the first time, he smiled. After the science exhibition, things began to change for Rizwan. Some students who once ignored him now nodded when he passed by. One teacher even praised his project in class. But not everyone was happy. Adil and his group still looked at him with anger and jealousy. How did he fix that project so fast? One boy asked. Adil replied, "He cheated. That janitor helped him. They're both low class. He doesn't deserve to be here." But Adil was wrong. Rizwan did deserve to be there. And deep down, even he was beginning to believe it. A new curiosity. Still, one question didn't leave Rizwan's mind. Who was Uncle Kareem? Why did that army officer salute him? Why was a war hero working as a janitor? And what was the meaning behind that strange name, Ghost Hand? Every day after school, Rizwan would walk by Kareem's small janitor room, hoping to get a look inside again. But the door was always shut. Until one rainy afternoon, when everything changed, the door left open. It was a Thursday. School ended early because of the heavy rain. Most students rushed out to catch their vans. But Rizwan forgot his umbrella in class. He went back inside. As he passed the janitor's hallway, he noticed something strange. Kareem's door was slightly open. He stopped. His heart beat faster. Should he walk away or go in? He looked left, then right. The hallway was empty. Carefully, he pushed the door open. Inside the mystery room, it was a small, dark room with a dusty table, an old metal chair, a fan that made clicking sounds, and a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Rizwan saw a small cupboard, and next to it, a metal locker. The same locker he had seen before, the same one that had the photograph and the medal. Rizwan hesitated, then stepped closer. The locker was closed, but not locked. He touched the handle, clicked it open. The secrets inside the locker were just a few items. A neatly folded military uniform, still smelling like gunpowder and metal. A medal with the words, "For bravery in combat, 1998. A letter, yellow and creased, with official stamps. And a journal, with the name Captain Kareem written in faded ink. Rizwan sat down on the floor. He opened the journal. The handwriting was strong and sharp. He read the first line. "We entered the enemy zone at 3:17 am. No backup. 23 soldiers. Only 24 bullets. I had to think fast." Rizwan kept reading. Page after page, the journal told the story of a brave soldier who defused bombs, rescued trapped friends, and even walked through fire to save a wounded child. It didn't sound like fiction. It sounded real. And then on one page, Rizwan read something that stopped his breath. "After the mission, they called me a hero. But I saw too much. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I left the army, left my name, and became no one." Rizwan's eyes filled with tears. He understood now. Uncle Kareem didn't hide because he was ashamed. He hid because he was broken inside. The confrontation. Suddenly, a voice. "What are you doing here?" Rizwan jumped. Uncle Kareem was standing at the door. His eyes looked tired, but calm. Rizwan stood up, guilty and nervous. "I'm sorry. The door was open. I just wanted to know the truth." Kareem walked in slowly. He didn't shout. He didn't get angry. He sat down on the chair, looked at the journal and sighed. "You read it?" Rizwan nodded. "Is it all true?" he asked. Kareem didn't answer at first. Then he said softly, "Yes, every word." "But why did you hide it?" Rizwan whispered. Kareem looked at him for a long time. Then he replied, "Because some wounds never heal, Rizwan. Some stories are better left untold." The bond grows stronger. For the next few minutes, no one spoke. The rain hit the window hard. Then Kareem said, "You remind me of someone." Who? Rizwan asked. A boy I saved once. He was brave. But the world laughed at him too. Rizwan felt a strange warmth in his heart. He asked, "Why are you helping me?" Kareem smiled gently. "Because one day someone helped me. And because boys like you grow up to change the world." From that day on, something changed between them. Rizwan began spending more time with Kareem, not just to talk, but to learn. Kareem showed him how to fix broken things, how to read maps, and even how to stay strong when the world feels cold. Days passed after Rizwan found Kareem's journal. But the memory of those words, those stories, and the man behind the mop still echoed in his mind. At school, Rizwan now walked with a little more strength in his step. He wasn't loud, he wasn't proud, but he wasn't scared anymore. Some students respected him now, but others didn't. Especially Adil, the rich man's son, the threat in the shadows. Adil had always been popular. He wore branded shoes, drove to school in a black SUV, and carried the newest tablet. Teachers smiled when he entered. But now, people were talking about Rizwan instead. That janitor kid's project was amazing. Did you know a soldier helped him? Rizwan's smarter than he looks. Each whisper made Adil's heart burn. He doesn't belong here, Adil muttered one day in class. He's just a poor boy pretending to be special. The plan? One afternoon, Adil gathered his friends in the school's media lab. "I have a plan," he said. "We're going to prove who Rizwan really is, a cheat." His friend, Saad, asked, "How?" Adil smiled. "We'll get into his bag, check his books, maybe find something he copied. Or better, we plant something." "You mean frame him?" Adil didn't answer, but his silence said everything. The trap is set. The next day during sports period, Rizwan left his bag under his desk like everyone else. Adil pretended to tie his shoe, slipped into the class, and quietly opened Rizwan's bag. He pulled out a file. Nothing unusual. Then he reached into his own bag and took out a small flash drive. On it, he had saved a project copied from the internet. Full of fancy diagrams and stolen code, he slipped it into Rizwan's pencil case, then walked out. The trap was ready. The fall. That evening, the computer teacher called Rizwan into the lab. "We found a flash drive in your bag," she said, her tone cold. "It contains a copied project, and your name is on the file." Rizwan's heart dropped. "I didn't put it there," he said. But no one believed him. The principal was cold. "You disappointed us," the principal said. "We thought you had changed." Rizwan tried to explain. "Someone planted it. Please believe me." But the principal had already made up his mind. "You're suspended for 1 week," he declared. Rizwan stood frozen. Tears filled his eyes, but he refused to let them fall. The walk of shame. As Rizwan walked out of the office, he saw Adil standing near the window, smirking. Rizwan said nothing. He just walked past. Down the hallway. Through the gate. Into the rain. It felt like the whole world was silent. Like it didn't care. The one who listened. When Rizwan reached home, he didn't speak. He skipped dinner. Sat in the dark corner of the room. The next morning, someone knocked at the door. It was Uncle Kareem. "I heard what happened," he said. Rizwan nodded. "They think I cheated." Kareem sat beside him. "Do you remember what I told you?" he asked. "Some people will try to break your truth because they are afraid of it." "I don't want to go back," Rizwan whispered. Kareem replied gently. "Then you let them win." The plan to fight back. Kareem looked serious. "We'll prove you're innocent." "But how?" Rizwan asked. Kareem smiled. "Every crime leaves a shadow, even lies." That night, they created a plan. Kareem borrowed an old laptop. Rizwan listed everyone who could have been near his bag. One name stood out, Adil. Kareem said, "Tomorrow, we go back to school." The hidden eye. The next morning, they visited the school guard. Kareem asked, "Do your cameras work?" The guard nodded. "The hallway cam always runs." They checked the footage. Rizwan's classroom, 12:32 p.m. Rizwan leaves for sports. 12:36 p.m. Adil enters the classroom, stays for 2 minutes, then walks out, holding something in his hand. Truth Unlocked Kareem took the video to the principal. At first, the principal refused to watch, but when he saw Adil on camera, alone with Rizwan's bag, his face turned pale. He called Adil and his father the next day. Adil stood, speechless as the footage played. His father, a tall man in a suit, looked shocked. "You lied?" he barked. Adil tried to speak. I just wanted to teach him a lesson." His father slapped him across the face. In front of everyone, he shouted, "You have shamed us." The apology. The principal called Rizwan to the auditorium. Students gathered, curious. Adil stood on stage, head low. "I lied about Rizwan," he said. "He didn't cheat. I framed him. I was jealous." Gasps filled the room. Then silence. The principal turned to Rizwan. "I am sorry, Rizwan," he said. "You were honest, and we failed you." Rizwan simply nodded. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. It had been a week since the truth came out. The school welcomed Rizwan back like a hero. Some kids clapped. Some teachers smiled with pride. Even the principal looked at him differently now. But Rizwan didn't care about the attention. His heart still carried a weight. He kept thinking about Uncle Kareem. Who was he really? Why did he disappear from the army? And why did he never talk about his past? An unexpected gift. One afternoon after class, Rizwan found a small brown envelope in his school bag. There was no name, just one word on the front. "Read." Rizwan looked around. No one seemed to be watching. He opened it slowly. Inside was an old letter, yellow with age, folded many times. And at the top, in strong handwriting, "To Kareem, if I don't make it back." Rizwan's hands began to shake. It was written by someone named Major Zafar. He began to read. The letter. "Kareem, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I want you to know, I never blamed you. You tried your best to save us. You were the bravest among us. The others may not understand, but I did." Rizwan read faster. "They will tell lies about you. They may say you ran. But I know the truth. You carried me out of the fire. You went back for Aman. You never gave up. But still, they made you the villain." Rizwan's eyes filled with tears. This letter was proof. Uncle Kareem didn't leave in shame. He was forced to disappear. The secret behind his silence. Rizwan ran straight to Kareem's room that evening. He showed him the letter. Kareem stared at it for a long time. Then he sat down quietly. "I thought I burned that," he said softly. Rizwan asked, "Why didn't you show it to anyone?" Kareem replied, "Because no one wanted to hear the truth back then. They needed a scapegoat, and I was that scapegoat." Rizwan asked, "Then why help the school? Why clean floors for people who would never understand your worth?" Kareem smiled. "Because I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for kids like you." A fire rekindled. The letter did something to Kareem. It unlocked something that had been closed for many years. The next morning, he came to school wearing his old army cap. His back straighter, his steps stronger. Some teachers looked confused, but no one dared to ask. Later, during lunch, Rizwan stood in the middle of the courtyard. He held up the letter. "This belongs to a hero," he said. "He never ran. He never failed. He saved lives. And we owe him our respect." Students gathered. Many listened in silence. For the first time, Uncle Kareem was seen, truly seen. Adil's change. Even Adil, who had humiliated Rizwan weeks ago, came forward that day. He stood near Kareem and said, "I'm sorry for everything." Kareem nodded. He said nothing. But he didn't need to. Forgiveness was not in his words. It was in his eyes. The journalist appears. 2 days later, a man visited the school. He was a local journalist, wearing glasses and a notepad in his hand. "I heard there's a forgotten war hero here," he said. Rizwan took him to Kareem. The journalist asked questions. Kareem answered with honesty, but no pride. "I didn't do anything special," he said. I just did what was right. The journalist took photos of the medal, the journal, and the letter. He promised, "The world needs to know your story." The article that shocked everyone. 1 week later, a story appeared in the local newspaper, From Janitor to Hero, The Hidden Life of Captain Kareem. It had pictures, quotes, and even part of the letter from Major Zafar. People from the city started visiting the school. Some came to thank Kareem. Others came to apologize. But Kareem stayed humble. "I'm just a man," he said. "Don't make me a statue. Just remember the truth." Rizwan's realization. That night, Rizwan sat by his window and wrote in his diary. Sometimes we judge people by their clothes, their jobs, or their silence. But inside those quiet lives are love stories. And today, I saw the loudest one. He closed his diary and whispered, "Thank you, Uncle Kareem, for fighting more than one war." Closing scene. As the school bell rang the next morning, Rizwan stood at the gate. This time, he wasn't just a student. He was a storyteller. And he knew his story was not over yet. It was a cold morning. The sky was cloudy, and the schoolyard was quiet. Rizwan stood near the garden, helping Kareem plant flowers. They had made it a small weekend tradition. But today, Kareem looked different. He kept checking his watch. His hands trembled slightly. "Are you okay?" Rizwan asked. Kareem nodded slowly, just waiting for something I never thought would come. The stranger in black. At exactly 11 o'clock am, a black car stopped at the school gate. Out stepped a tall man in a military coat. Silver stars on his shoulders. His face was older, but his eyes were sharp like steel. He looked around, his eyes locked onto Kareem, and he walked straight toward him. "The face from the past. Kareem," the man said in a firm voice. Kareem stood up. His body stiffened. "Colonel Rehman," he replied softly. Rizwan watched from the side. He didn't speak, but he could feel the tension. It was like the air had turned heavy. Unfinished business. The colonel looked around at the small school garden. "So this is where you disappeared to," he said. Kareem nodded. "A quiet place, with honest people." The colonel didn't smile. "I came because of the newspaper," he said. "That letter? From Zafar? I didn't know it existed." Kareem's voice was calm. "No one wanted to know. Back then, I was easier to blame." The colonel looked away. Silence stretched between them. Then he said, "I owe you an apology." The apology that took years. Kareem looked at the colonel's eyes. "I don't need your apology," he said gently. "But I do need you to clear my name." Colonel Rehman reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a red folder with the army seal. "This is an official letter," he said. "Your record is cleared. You are recognized as a hero. Posthumous medal approval is also in progress." Kareem took the folder with quiet hands. He stared at it for a long moment, then said, "Thank you." "Why now?" Rizwan finally stepped forward. He couldn't stay silent anymore. "Why now?" he asked the colonel. "Why not before? Why wait so many years?" The colonel turned to him. His eyes were tired. "Because truth takes time, son. And sometimes, people aren't brave enough to face it until someone else makes them." He looked at Kareem. "You made me face mine." The offer. Before leaving, Colonel Rehman said one more thing. "The army is offering you a full honor return. You can train recruits. Share your story. You'll have a badge again." Kareem smiled, but it was a sad smile. He shook his head. "I already have recruits," he said, placing a hand on Rizwan's shoulder. "They're here, in this school." The goodbye. The colonel gave one last salute. Kareem hesitated, but then slowly raised his hand in return. It was the first salute he had given in 20 years. The colonel got back into his car and drove away. Kareem stood still, watching until the vehicle disappeared. Then he turned to Rizwan and whispered, "That was the last ghost I needed to face." A story that won't die that evening. Rizwan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about how many years Kareem had lived in silence. How one man carried the weight of lies, until truth knocked on his gate. He opened his journal and wrote, "Some men fight wars with guns. Some fight with silence. Kareem fought both, and still stood tall." Next day, surprise. At school, the principal made a big announcement. "We are naming our new library after Captain Kareem, a true symbol of honesty, courage, and humility." Students clapped. Teachers nodded. Kareem, standing at the back, just smiled quietly. He didn't need a statue. He didn't need fame. He had something better. Peace. The school was buzzing with excitement. A famous education trust had chosen Rizwan's school to host a national student conference. Many students from other cities were coming. There would be speeches, competitions, and awards, and for the first time, Rizwan was chosen to give the opening speech. It was an honor, but it also came with pressure. The comment that broke him. A day before the event, Rizwan was practicing in the school auditorium. His words were ready. His heart was full. But just then, he heard a laugh behind him. It was Maher, a boy from another school. He had expensive shoes, a fancy badge, and a proud walk. "You're the speaker?" Maher asked, smirking. Rizwan nodded. "You don't deserve to be up there," Maher said. "This isn't your place. You're just a janitor's boy." The words hit like a slap. Rizwan froze. Maher turned and walked away, leaving behind silence and shame. The moment of doubt. That night, Rizwan sat in his room. His speech lay on the table, unfinished. His thoughts were heavy. Maybe Maher was right. Maybe he didn't belong on that stage. Maybe he was just a poor boy who got lucky. He looked at the photo on his wall, him and Kareem, smiling under the school tree. And for the first time in weeks, he felt small again. The janitor's truth. Kareem noticed Rizwan's silence the next morning. "What happened?" he asked gently. Rizwan hesitated, then finally spoke. "Someone said I don't deserve to be on stage because of you." Kareem looked at him calmly. "Do you believe him?" Rizwan didn't answer. So Kareem stood up and walked to his old trunk. He pulled out a black box. Inside it were 2 medals, a small flag, and a folded photograph of his old army unit. He placed the items in Rizwan's hands. "Do you know why I never wore these?" he asked. Rizwan shook his head. "Because I never needed them to feel proud. I knew who I was." Kareem looked deep into Rizwan's eyes. "And you must remember who you are." The speech begins. The school auditorium was full. Students, parents, teachers, and guests filled every seat. The principal walked on stage. "We are proud to open today's event with a speech by one of our very own, Rizwan." Rizwan walked up slowly. His hands were cold. His heart beat fast. He saw Maher sitting in the front row, arms crossed, smirking again. But this time, Rizwan didn't look away. The speech that changed the room. Rizwan took a deep breath, then began. "Good morning, everyone. I was told I don't belong on this stage. That because my guardian is a janitor, I'm not good enough. But let me tell you something. The man who raised me cleaned floors, yes. But before that, he saved lives. He was a soldier who carried his wounded captain on his back. He was blamed, forgotten, and erased. Yet, he never gave up." Gasps filled the room. Maher looked shocked. Rizwan continued. "He didn't tell the world. He didn't ask for applause. But I'm here to tell his story. Because sometimes, real heroes don't wear medals. They wear silence. And today, I am proud, not in spite of who raised me, but because of who raised me." The auditorium went quiet. Then, applause exploded. Teachers stood. Parents clapped. Even the chief guest wiped a tear. The most unexpected salute. As Rizwan stepped down, a military officer in the crowd walked forward. He stood in front of Kareem, who was sitting quietly in the last row. And then, he saluted. The crowd turned to look. Kareem stood slowly, and for the second time, he returned the salute. Tears rolled down his face. But they were not from pain. They were from pride. Maher's apology. After the event, Maher walked toward Rizwan. He looked embarrassed. "I didn't know." He began. "I was wrong. I'm sorry. Rizwan smiled. It's okay. Just remember, never judge someone by their shoes or their job. Mahir nodded. He understood now. A new chapter. The next week, Rizwan's speech was published in a national magazine. Kareem's story was told across the country. He was invited to speak at schools, army events, and community centers. But he always came back to Rizwan's school. That was home. The school was buzzing with excitement. A famous education trust had chosen Rizwan's school to host a national student conference. Many students from other cities were coming. There would be speeches, competitions, and awards. And for the first time, Rizwan was chosen to give the opening speech. It was an honor, but it also came with pressure. The comment that broke him. A day before the event, Rizwan was practicing in the school auditorium. His words were ready. His heart was full. But just then, he heard a laugh behind him. It was Mahir, a boy from another school. He had expensive shoes, a fancy badge, and a proud walk. "You're the speaker?" Mahir asked, smirking. Rizwan nodded. "You don't deserve to be up there," Mahir said. "This isn't your place. You're just a janitor's boy." The words hit like a slap. Rizwan froze. Mahir turned and walked away, leaving behind silence and shame. The moment of doubt. That night, Rizwan sat in his room. His speech lay on the table, unfinished. His thoughts were heavy. Maybe Mahir was right. Maybe he didn't belong on that stage. Maybe he was just a poor boy who got lucky. He looked at the photo on his wall, him and Kareem, smiling under the school tree. And for the first time in weeks, he felt small again. The janitor's truth. Kareem noticed Rizwan's silence the next morning. "What happened?" he asked gently. Rizwan hesitated, then finally spoke. "Someone said I don't deserve to be on stage because of you." Kareem looked at him calmly. "Do you believe him?" Rizwan didn't answer. So Kareem stood up and walked to his old trunk. He pulled out a black box. Inside it were 2 medals, a small flag, and a folded photograph of his old army unit. He placed the items in Rizwan's hands. "Do you know why I never wore these?" he asked. Rizwan shook his head. "Because I never needed them to feel proud. I knew who I was." Kareem looked deep into Rizwan's eyes. "And you must remember who you are." The speech begins. The school auditorium was full. Students, parents, teachers, and guests filled every seat. The principal walked on stage. "We are proud to open today's event with a speech by one of our very own, Rizwan." Rizwan walked up slowly. His hands were cold. His heart beat fast. He saw Mahir sitting in the front row, arms crossed, smirking again. But this time, Rizwan didn't look away. The speech that changed the room. Rizwan took a deep breath, then began. "Good morning, everyone. I was told I don't belong on this stage. That because my guardian is a janitor, I'm not good enough. But let me tell you something. The man who raised me cleaned floors, yes. But before that, he saved lives. He was a soldier who carried his wounded captain on his back. He was blamed, forgotten, and erased. Yet, he never gave up." Gasps filled the room. Mahir looked shocked. Rizwan continued. "He didn't tell the world. He didn't ask for applause. But I'm here to tell his story. Because sometimes, real heroes don't wear medals. They wear silence. And today, I am proud, not in spite of who raised me, but because of who raised me." The auditorium went quiet. Then, applause exploded. Teachers stood. Parents clapped. Even the chief guest wiped a tear. The most unexpected salute. As Rizwan stepped down, a military officer in the crowd walked forward. He stood in front of Kareem, who was sitting quietly in the last row. And then, he saluted. The crowd turned to look. Kareem stood slowly, and for the second time, he returned the salute. Tears rolled down his face, but they were not from pain. They were from pride. Mahir's apology. After the event, Mahir walked toward Rizwan. He looked embarrassed. "I didn't know," he began. "I was wrong. I'm sorry." Rizwan smiled. "It's okay. Just remember, never judge someone by their shoes or their job? Mahir nodded. He understood now. A new chapter. The next week, Rizwan's speech was published in a national magazine. Kareem's story was told across the country. He was invited to speak at schools, army events, and community centers. But he always came back to Rizwan's school. That was home. It was a new school year. Fresh uniforms. New students. But one face was missing from the gate. Kareem was no longer there. He had quietly retired. No farewell party. No loud goodbye. He just cleaned his tools one last time, folded his old uniform, and walked away. But his absence felt loud. Very loud. Empty steps, full hearts. Rizwan was now in his final school year. He walked past the gate every morning. The bench near the tree, empty. The old locker silent. No sound of Kareem's broom. No soft humming. No kind smile. But Kareem was still everywhere. In every plant he planted. In every wall he repaired. In every child who had once been told you can't, and proved they could. Letters in the dust. One day, during cleaning week, students opened an old storage room. Behind the shelf, under some dust, they found a box. Inside were Kareem's old diary. Letters from students who had left years ago. Photos of events where he stood in the background, smiling silently. Rizwan was called in. He opened the diary. On the first page it said, "I was never meant to be seen. I just wanted them to feel safe. If they smiled once a day, my job was done." Kareem. Tears filled Rizwan's eyes. The assembly announcement. The principal stood before the students one morning. She held the diary in her hand. "We often talk about leaders, toppers, and heroes," she said. "But today, we remember the quiet warrior who cleaned our mess, watered our gardens, and fixed our broken hearts." She held up Kareem's picture. "We are renaming our school building to the Kareem Memorial Block." The hall burst into applause. Some clapped, some cried. But no one stayed silent. The last visit. A few weeks later, on a rainy evening, a black scooter stopped outside the school. An old man stepped down. He walked slowly, carefully. It was Kareem. He came not to work, but to watch. From a distance, he saw the new name board. He smiled. Not a proud smile. A peaceful one. Just then, Rizwan ran to him. "Why didn't you tell us you were coming?" Kareem laughed. "I just wanted to see if my flowers still bloom." "They do," Rizwan said. "And so do your students." Words that stay forever. Rizwan walked Kareem through the building. He showed him the hall named after him. The small museum corner with his photo, medal, and a copy of his speech. Kids passed by and whispered, "That's him, the real soldier. He changed this school." Kareem looked at Rizwan and said, "I didn't change the school. You all did. I just wiped the dust so you could shine."